Like to grow up on this beloved property, and her experience as a young woman and now with this opening to the public. Susie Fernandez, thank you so much for being here.
Okay. Gosh, I don't know what I'm going to add to that. That was pretty profound. I'm not profound. Well, let me just start in the beginning. Bernardo Fernandez, my great-grandfather, came to California in 1853, like all other young men of his time, to go look for gold. And he didn't last very long, and he came back to the Bay Area and began a business, a trading business in the city of Pinole. And his trading business was so good that he acquired a lot of money. And his other pastime besides the trading business was the fact that he bought any piece of property available to him. And he not only bought over 5,000 acres in West County, he bought property in Oakland, San Francisco, Alameda, and even Long Beach. He acquired all kinds of property. And when he bought this property, he bought it from the Martinez, Ignacio Martinez family in about 1870, 1880. And he didn't work the property, he didn't live on the property, but he would rent it out to ranchers. And over the years, that's what it's always been, cattle ranches. And when he died, my grandfather, Manuel Fernandez from Pinole, inherited the parcel you're going to walk on today, that's opening today. This parcel was inherited by Thomas Fernandez, another son of Bernardo. Once my father, Carol Fernandez, came home from World War II, 1946-45, my grandfather handed him the ranches. And he built a home there, which is over above the golf course. If you're in that one hole that's up against the house, my father built that house up there about 1950. And we moved on to the ranch. And that's where I grew up. And I had 7 brothers and another sister. And it's a good thing we were out in the country, but nobody in town could have handled us. And so part of living on a ranch, and particularly a working cattle ranch, was the fact that you needed to get on the back of a horse and go check fences and check the cattle periodically. You couldn't just turn them loose and just hope they're doing okay. And so at the age of 12, my parents allowed me to take a horse back into the hills for hours. And until I left the ranch, that was my favorite pastime. And I would do that probably twice a week at least. And if there was any gate that I could open, being a 12 and 13-year-old girl, I would open it and go through it. So I didn't really stay on our ranch. And there was a time, I think when I was about 14 or 15, that I came through this ranch and came out the other side, down by the railroad tracks, and went across because we owned the parcel on the other side. I'll tell you this, the memories of being up in the hills by yourself, away from the 11 other people you have to live with, was wonderful. I still vividly remember the sound of the horses' hoofs on the trail. No sound of anything but maybe a hawk in the sky or the wind blowing through the grass. It was, how can I describe it? It was one of the most peaceful memories I have in my entire life. And you know, because we live out of town, we don't have the backyard like everybody else has. The hills were our backyard. And that's where we played, that's where we hiked, that's where we had adventures. We would name, there's certain areas on the ranch that we gave names to. And I was just talking with my brother. There's the Goose Field, which is the big meadow out in front of the 800-foot hill when you get up there. The Vista Point, I think that's what they call it now. But the Goose Field is what lays in front of you, because Canadian geese would stop And my dad would feed his cattle there in the winter, and the geese would fly over and they'd see the feed and they'd come down and feed. And so the Canadian geese, we called it the goose field. There was a place there with fossils. Although the weeds are so tall because there's been no cattle for about 15 years, you can't see it any longer, but there are fossil outcroppings up there. And we used to call those outcroppings the Flaming Cliffs. It was named after an archaeological site, I think, in the Gobi Desert. And that's our Flaming Cliffs. We each have some kind of fossil in our house. Everybody does. And there's just so many places that I could tell you that we named and made personal commitment to these areas, you know. Oh, I'm going up the Laurel Canyon. Oh, I'm going to the Wayback, you know. And it just was personal, not impersonal. It wasn't the wide open spaces. It was my backyard. So today, ladies and gentlemen, you get to take a walk through my backyard. And I know you're going to enjoy it. Thank you.